On the 16th of December year 2000, a 31-year-old man left his home at dawn with his boat to go duck hunting at Lake Seminole, in the Florida area. When afternoon rolled by and he still wasn't back, his worried wife called family and they went to the Lake Seminole area to look for him. Only his 1994 Ford Bronco was found. His disappearance was reported and a search was immediately carried out across the lake for him. They thought he had drowned and were searching for a body. But, when his body still wasn't found days later, they came up with another theory: he had been eaten by alligators, and so the case was closed. For 17 years, the truth about his disappearance remained hidden. And when it was finally revealed, it was shocking. What really happened? In this episode, we'll be diving into the case of Mike Williams. Jerry Michael Williams, better known as Mike, was born on October 16, 1969 in Bradfordville, Florida, USA. As a child, he grew up in a loving household with a mom who was a daycare provider and a dad who was a Greyhound bus driver. Mike was the younger of 2 boys, and together, the family of 4 lived in a double-wide trailer. Although his parents could save up and build a house at that time, they instead decided that their children deserved a good education, and so they saved their money, ensuring the 2 boys attended North Florida Christian High School, a private Christian school in the Tallahassee area of Florida. The 2 boys also helped contribute to bills by taking up part-time shifts at the local supermarket. Although they weren't wealthy monetarily, they were wealthy in the bond they shared and their familial life. Mr. and Mrs. Williams made sure the boys never lacked anything, and the boys, growing up in such a household, knew the importance of money and had values instilled in them. At the North Florida Christian High School, Mike excelled. He was the student council president, a member of the football team, and an active member of the Key Club. He had many friends at school, one of them being a girl he really liked. One could say Mike had a crush on this girl. Her name was Denise Merrill, and they soon became a couple. As a couple, they did things together, and became friends with another couple, Kathy Thomas and Brian Winchester, who were also high school sweethearts. When Mike was 15, he took on duck hunting as a hobby, and even as a young lad, Mike would often go duck hunting whenever he had spare time. After graduating high school, Mike went ahead to attend Florida State University, where he majored in political science and urban planning. Mike excelled at the university as well and got a job offer even before he graduated. He accepted the offer and became a property appraiser at Ketchum Appraisal Group, a property appraisal group situated there in Tallahassee, Florida. In 1994, he married his high school sweetheart Denise Merrill, and life was good. Growing up in a household where there wasn't usually enough, he worked hard to provide for his wife. He was a hard-working man, and even his boss took note of this. He was also head over heels for his wife and would do anything to spend time with her. He always went home for dinner, returning to work after his wife was asleep. He was a provider and would ensure his wife lacked nothing. In 1999, the couple welcomed a daughter. This was something that they had looked forward to since they started dating. Mike stepped up to the role of fatherhood. He wanted to be present in his daughter's life as much as he could, and although he still worked hard, now he had 2 people to cater for, and he loved every single bit of it. He really loved being a father and looked forward to spending time with his daughter. He was as dedicated to his family as he was to his work. Due to his hard-working nature, Mike Williams soon started earning more. According to his mother, he was earning around $200,000 per year at his job. With this amount of income, he believed he could give his daughter more than what was given to him as a child. The couple soon bought a home at an upscale division in the city. With things going well, the couple looked forward to expanding their family. 2 days before Mike's disappearance, he and Denise told his mother and brother that they were planning on having another child soon. On that fateful day, Mike got ready at dawn to go duck hunting at the Lake Seminole. It was a few days to the couple's wedding anniversary and there was a trip planned. The plan was that Mike was going to have his time doing what he loved, duck hunting, and when he came back, the family would go to their destination to celebrate their anniversary. When noon rolled by and Mike was still not back, Denise called family and friends asking if they had seen him. She told them where he was headed that morning and friends and family headed to the lake. Word also got back to his childhood friend Brian Winchester that he was missing. Concerned, Brian also made his way to Mike's last known location to search for him. When they couldn't locate him, investigators with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FFWCC, were called, and a search began. The search was soon called off after a storm blew in. Mike's disappearance was reported to the FFWCC as a missing hunters case, so they searched for him as one, focusing on rescuing him. A few days later, his boat was found, but there was still no sign of Mike Williams. Focusing on the area where his truck and boat were found, investigators tried finding him in the water. They theorized that Mike had hit a stump with his boat, fallen out and drowned. They believed his body would definitely float up to the surface after a few days. With this in mind, the heartbroken family waited daily for a call to come identify Mike. 10 days passed and still no sign of Mike's body. At this point, investigators had assumed the worst. They were of the opinion that Mike's body had been eaten by alligators, that's why they couldn't find him. The search was called off in early February of 2001. A few months before Mike's disappearance, a $1 million life insurance policy alongside other policies were bought on him. His childhood friend Brian Winchester helped in securing these insurance policies. When Mike didn't show up after a few days, his wife Denise tried cashing out the money but was told that was impossible since Mike's case was still a missing persons case. In June of 2001, 6 months after Mike's disappearance, a pair of waders was found floating in the lake. Divers were called to search the area thoroughly, and from the bottom of the lake, a lightweight hunting jacket and a flashlight were recovered. Inside of the jacket's pockets, a hunting license with Mike's name and signature was found. So obviously, this jacket belonged to Mike Williams. But, if he had been wearing it at the time of his disappearance and had been eaten by alligators, then there ought to have been teeth marks on the jacket. There was none. Also, none of the items found had signs of having been in the water for as long as Mike had been missing. This raised brows of detectives. A week later, a judge granted Denise Williams's petition to have Mike declared legally dead. According to Denise, since Mike's belongings had been found in the water, there was proof that Mike had been there but had been consumed entirely by the alligators in the water. With this ruling, Denise was able to claim almost $2 million in insurance money as his spouse. When all these was happening, Mike's mother Cheryl Williams was having a hard time believing her son was truly dead. It was tough for her because she had just lost her husband a few months before Mike's disappearance. Mike, being the good son he was, always spent time with her consoling her, and now all of a sudden, he was gone. She didn't believe the whole alligator theory and was of the opinion that Mike was never at the lake. Over the years, she wrote multiple letters to the mayor begging for her son's case to be reopened. While Mike's mother was trying to get to the bottom of his disappearance, Mike's wife Denise was moving on. She married the family friend Brian Winchester 5 years after Mike's death ruling. The new couple continued to live in the house Mike had bought and carried on with their lives. Some people expected Mike's mom to be against this new development, but the poor woman had other things on her mind, like finding her missing son. Cheryl Williams didn't believe Mike had drowned because he wasn't a stranger to the waters. She tried her best to convince authorities to conduct another investigation, but that was unsuccessful. While doing all these, she began receiving threats to discourage her. Over the next years, Cheryl conducted investigations on her own, ran ads on local newspapers, and even put up billboards. People felt she was going crazy and hadn't come to terms with Mike's death. Her perseverance was born out of a mother's intuition, which we can say is always right. In 2004, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, agreed to reopen the case. It usually does not have jurisdiction in missing persons case, but this was an exception. Many officers agreed that the circumstances surrounding Mike's apparent drowning was unusual. Mike never went duck hunting alone, so why was he alone on this day? Also, when his boat was found, the engine was off with a full gas tank. If Mike had fallen off the boat, the engine would have remained running and would have only gone off when its fuel is exhausted. One more thing they found was that alligators do not feed during the winter months due to the cold temperatures, so the theory that Mike was eaten by alligators was debunked. Even if Mike had been eaten by alligators, there was no way the alligators could have consumed all 5 foot 10 inches of him. They would have left something behind. But without any evidence, it was impossible for detectives to make a case, and so they closed the case in 2006. But Cheryl continued to do all she could to publicize her son's case, even taking out ads in the Tallahassee Democrat. In 2012, 12 years after Mike's disappearance, Denise and Brian Winchester separated. She went ahead to file for a divorce in 2015, but Brian wasn't having any of it. He opposed the divorce and had to be ordered to comply. On August 5, 2016, Denise was seated in her car, talking to her sister on the phone when Brian climbed over the back seat of her car, ordering her to drive to a location while pointing a gun at her. Denise, scared for her life, did exactly as she was told. He claimed his behavior was necessary since Denise had refused to answer his calls or reply his text messages. After assuring her he wasn't going to hurt her, he confessed to her that he had a gun because he was going to kill himself. He didn't want to live without her. She was able to calm him down and drove him back to where he parked his truck, promising him they would work things out. Before leaving her car, he took some things, including a spray bottle of bleach and a tan sheet. After this incident, Denise drove straight to the police, reporting the incident. Brian was arrested on charges of kidnapping, domestic assault and armed burglary. He was held without bond after Denise claimed she feared for her life and that of her daughters. While being held in jail, Brian made a deal with prosecutors. He would reveal a secret about Mike Williams's disappearance to them in exchange for a minimum sentence. Prosecutors, curious to hear what he had to say, agreed. What Brian Winchester told them was one no one saw coming. In 1997, he had started an affair with Denise Williams. According to Brian, although he and Denise were in love, she wasn't ready to become a divorcee as her parents were staunchly against divorce due to religious beliefs. So, they carried on their affair, meeting up when Mike was away and without his own wife, Kathy, knowing anything about it. In the year 2000, they got tired of sneaking around and decided to get rid of their obstacles, Mike and Kathy. He confessed to telling Denise he wouldn't be able to take the life of his children's mother, but Denise had no problem killing Mike. She didn't want to share custody of her daughter and figured for her to have her daughter with her always, Mike had to go. And so, they made a plan. On that fateful day, Mike left his home to go duck hunting with Brian, his best friend. Brian planned to push Mike off the boat so he'd drown, but when he did that, Mike managed to get a hold of a stump and held on to the stump floating. When Brian saw there was no way Mike was gonna drown, he made a decision. He brought out a gun and shot Mike on his forehead, killing him instantly. With a bullet in his head, there was no way a drowning story would be believable, so Brian took Mike's body to a different location and buried him there. He then went back home to inform Denise the deed was done before leaving the area. Denise waited a while, and then put out the call informing family Mike hadn't returned from his duck hunting trip. In December 2017, Winchester was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the kidnapping, with credit for the 502 days already served, to be followed by 15 years probation. No mention was made about Mike's disappearance at Brian's kidnapping sentencing. The next day, at a news conference, it was announced to assembled reporters that Mike Williams's body had been found and it had been determined he was the victim of a homicide. His remains had been found at the end of Dead End Gardner Road in northern Leon County, 5 miles from where he grew up. This was confirmed with a match to his mother's DNA. According to the detectives, they had found his remains in October, but kept it under wraps. 98% of his bones were recovered along with some of the clothing he had been wearing. On May 8, 2018, Denise Merrill was arrested at Florida State University as she left work to celebrate her daughter's 19th birthday. This was minutes after a grand jury had indicted her on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and accessory after the fact. In late June 2018, Denise Williams was ordered held without bond, with trial date set for September 24. An audio of Brian's confession was played in court where he confessed to pulling the trigger himself but claimed it was Denise's idea. The jury convicted Denise on all charges after deliberating for 4 hours. In February of 2019, Denise was sentenced to life imprisonment. 5 months later, Mike and Denise's daughter Ansley Williams was awarded all assets of her late father's estate and insurance monies due to Denise. Her mother signed them over to her to avoid prosecution on 3 counts of insurance fraud. In January 2020, Denise Williams appealed her conviction and life sentence. The murder conviction was overturned, but the conspiracy to commit murder conviction was upheld, including the 30-year sentence that accompanied it. I don't understand how no one found it strange that Denise was trying to cash out the insurance money so soon after her husband's disappearance, even when he hadn't been confirmed dead. Then when she was refused, his jacket and flashlight magically appeared. I believe the police should have investigated further, but she carried on with her life for 17 years. It's unfortunate that in the end, no one really paid for the murder of Mike Williams. Brian Winchester had cut himself a deal to expose the truth, but in exchange wouldn't be charged, and that was exactly what happened. He wasn't charged. Denise Merrill, on the other hand, was charged and convicted, but the conviction for murder itself was eventually overturned. Mike Williams thought he had found love. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that the person he loved the most would be the one to kill him. May his soul continue to rest. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Also, turn on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video.